Sio Nagad, Dakwadola, Cara Cowan Watts. Hello, everyone. This is Cara Cowan Watts with Cherokee 411. What if the best way to understand Cherokee history was through stories you can't put down? The Cherokee Trilogy by James Humphrey brings our history to life, not as dry dates and footnotes, but as lived experience. Yes, there's fiction woven in, but the truth is, Cherokee history is often far more powerful than anything you could make up. These stories are filled with heroes, villains, and everyday Cherokee people facing impossible choices, choices that still shape who we are today. This project is a Cherokee 411 production created as a historical, cultural, and educational tool to enlighten the public about Cherokee history. It was shot and edited by award-winning Dallas cinematographer Jack Watkins, working in close collaboration with the Cherokee citizen and author himself, James Humphrey. The finished project includes 4 videos produced in broadcast, home viewing, and web-ready formats, available free for public use through Cherokee 411 and the author's website at jamesahumphrey.com. One extended feature traces Cherokee history from 1779 through the early development of Oklahoma. 3 shorter programs focus on key areas or eras: 1779 to 1836, the forced removal and settlement in Indian Territory, and the Civil War reconstruction and the rebirth of the Cherokee people in Oklahoma. The books and these films tell our story from our Cherokee point of view, written by a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and inspired by his grandmother, Ella Waters, a Dawes Roll signee. We invite news outlets, Cherokee at-large organizations, history and reading clubs, libraries, and schools to download or request digital copies of these presentations and help ensure Cherokee history, language, and culture are known, understood, and remembered. Because our stories matter and they're still being written. Wado, this is Cara Cowan Watts with Cherokee 411.
This presentation is about living history. Some famous author once said you learn history, but you live historical fiction. The word in syllabary at the bottom of the screen is Didiohusti. Today, it translates as teacher, but in the late 1700s, as it was used in this trilogy, it meant much, much more. Teacher, mentor, healer, educator. CEO Nakata, James A. Humphrey, Dakwadoa, Paris, Texas, Awadena, Grapevine, Texas, Janela, Osta Igaliya. Hello, everyone. My name is James A. Humphrey. I was born in Paris, Texas. I live in Grapevine, Texas, and I have a good read. Janela, Alejilagi Sidanela. My grandmother on my dad's side, and Cherokee family. Ella Waters, my grandmother, and Dawes Roll signatories on the left. Her sister Bullet gave me the name of a character in my second book, and then to the right is my prominent Eastern Cherokee ancestor. The cover of Cherokee Rose, the second book in my trilogy, features the same Cherokee pot as Book 1 did, but now broken and spilling blood. The whip in the photo plays vividly to the book's plot, but it also symbolizes our forced removal. And here, I'll let you read my elevator pitch for Cherokee Rose. This photo is of Ella Waters, my grandmother. She inspired my fictional character heroine of Book 2, which I wrote first. Her character in Book 2 demanded the Book 1 and 3 spin-offs. Her fictional family spans the most tumultuous times of our history, and their heart-rending story mimics the Jelani experience. The Georgia militia's inhumane holding camps, specifically Camp Dahlonega in this book, provide the locale for much of Book 2's early chapters. Not as well known as the resulting exodus, the camp's death tolls are not usually compiled in Trail of Tears numbers. Some historians estimate deaths in the camps compared to those on the trail. The forced removal and Elle Waters' work to help her people consume the central plotting of Cherokee Rose, while life in Indian Territory and her trials to adjust wrap the story. With the locust plague in Oklahoma, I moved backward in time 10 years to build suspense in my tale. Phil's habeas corpus trial dominates the concluding chapters and is based on a trial 60 years later when a chief sued John Cook, but I adapted some of its proceedings into my trial. The addition of the Cherokee water spider story made the proceedings more Cherokee. The actual history in Cherokee Rose begins with the 1828 gold discovery and the resulting land grabs, plus the rise of the planter class in Georgia. The Cherokee conflict arises that will explode into strife, conflict, and civil war. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act was signed by Andrew Jackson, which set in progress the forced removal. In 1831, in Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, the Supreme Court supported the fact that the Cherokee Nation could sue to stop Georgia state laws and to strip Georgia state laws from Cherokee land and give Cherokee autonomy. The Supreme Court ruled at that time that the Cherokee Nation was a domestic dependent nation. In 1832, Worcester versus Georgia affirms the rights of Cherokees to a free trial. 1838 and 39 consumed the Cherokee people into holding camps in the forced removal. The first oppressors that my book features are commandeered by the Georgia militia and the Army under command of the pleasant-looking General Winfield Scott in the photo at the top. The first detachment of Cherokees under John Ross was led by Herr Conrad and departed from Fort Cass in August of 1838. My book features the forced removal in the first detachment. Now, again, in the author's license, the first detachment, I'm sure as most of y'all know, were actually 3 detachments, all going by water route. At that time, the rivers were very, very low, and many of the detachments had to transverse a lot of land. Fort Floyd, which is in the book, and all of the holding camp drama that happens in the book is in Fort Floyd. That was very, very near, and we're talking maybe 100 yards from Dahlonega. The map shown here illustrates the different routes during the forced removal. The photo of Elkhorn Tavern in 1861 looks much the same as when I visited several years ago. The place evokes a feeling of sadness and despair as you look out from its porch and imagine the lines of Cherokee that passed during the removal. One of the main reasons for the many, many deaths and the first detachment, the water routes, were overcrowded boats. The Army forced too many people on these boats. Of course, disease and absolutely poor supply chains, plus harsh treatment at the hands of the United States Army contributed much to many of those deaths. Elle Waters' trek in my book follows the northern land route. 1 in every 4 Cherokees died that winter of 1838-39. The actual first detachment was a water route. I made it in my book a land route for dramatic purposes. Arrival in Indian Territory offers hope, provisions, and possible reunification for our people. That reunification is perilous in these turbulent times. After arrival in Indian Territory, the Cherokee people began rebuilding amid this tremendous loss and a new political tension. They tried to reestablish farms and schools and churches, at the same time dealing with disease, hunger, and the trauma of the passage. The old settlers versus the new arrivals arise. The new arrivals, and then of course the third element was the Ross Party. The Ross Party was the National Party, and they opposed the Treaty Party, the Ridge group, who were signers of the treaty. Many of those signers were assassinated in June of 1839. In my book, a locust plague drives Ella from her Indian Territory farmstead. The plague actually happened in 1874. Using my author's license, I wrote the event in 1839 to enhance the drama in the tale. The Act of Union and a new Cherokee Constitution temporarily brought together these folks in 1839. Of course, those disagreements still exist today. Two other fictional events dominate the last half of Cherokee Rose: Ella's trial and the execution of Tessali. The trial in my book leans heavily on a trial 16 years later. And even though Tessali is an actual historical figure, my Tessali is fictional. The trial where Ella Waters is based on a legal issue, Standing Bear versus Crook, which happened actually about 50, 60 years after it takes place in my book. But I stole as an author, I stole the proceedings of the Standing Bear trial, made my character on trial, and used much of the proceedings in the book. The Standing Bear versus Crook was a court case for Native Americans trying to decide if Native Americans were persons within the meaning of the U.S. law. Therefore, if they were entitled to the protection of the United States Constitution, specifically the habeas corpus. Standing Bear, after the forced removal, returned for the funeral of the death of his son to Nebraska to bury his son. The Army arrested him, claimed his property, and put him on trial. And the only good thing about it was it gave me good content for my trial. To sum up the history behind Cherokee Rose, it opens during the Georgia Gold Rush in 1829, follows the family through holding camp, the forced removal, and settlement in Indian Territory, only for Ella to survive a trial by white jury and a political persecution to welcome the reality of post-removal. Cherokee Rose, the second book, spans a time when the Cherokees faced their greatest crisis. It started with the gold discovery in Georgia and the passage of the Indian Removal Act. The Supreme Court recognized their rights in Worcester versus Georgia, but Andrew Jackson ignored that ruling, leading to the Treaty of New Eshota, the signing of the Treaty of New Eshota, and the forced removal. Then, as a people, we face the challenges of internal division, loss of homeland, and rebuilding our political life and culture in Indian Territory.